All right, it is time for the much anticipated panel of the day. It's time for us to talk about all the things you got into last night. And by that, I mean gambling and weed and cryptocurrency. Did anybody get into that? No? Okay, a couple of you did. We're going to talk a little bit about crypto. We're going to talk about the risks that come with sports betting, it would come with marijuana related businesses. And our experts today, first we have a moderator, Miss Amber Harson. She's the CEO of Prodigy. And she is knowledgeable, a little feisty sometimes, and she brings informed, strategic challenge thinking. Next, I'm going to invite Todd Lane, who is the CEO of Cal Coast Federal Credit Union, and he will help us understand potentially the approach to crypto, I'm hoping. And Michael Maxwell, Board of Director at SCE Federal Credit Union, has some insight on apps for sports betting. And then Robert Craig, CEO of PayQuick, is helping credit unions with marijuana-related businesses and how we can work with those businesses in a safe and secure way. So please, Amber, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. So we've talked a lot over the course of the last day and a half or so about payments and fintech and money movement, and we get to talk about really all of them. So it's kind of nice we get to help wrap those all together. Money is moving faster and faster, right? Payments, how we exchange money between people is moving faster and faster every single day. And we talked just a little bit this morning. Todd from Co-op was sharing some stats around Venmo and PayPal. And I'll give some personal experience to that. I'm a member of 6 credit unions in 3 different states, Utah, Colorado, and California. I manage a competitive sports team comprised of 200 children and all of their parents. The CEO of a core is much easier, just so you know. And I run that entire business on Venmo because my credit unions, none of the 6 of my credit unions, actually have the infrastructure that allows that money to move to us for me to be able to manage that business as effectively as I can via Venmo. So we know that money is changing the way we work as consumers as well as commercially, right? That's more on the business side of things, and I'm running those platforms via different technology. And so as we see those things happening, we're also starting to see some pivots. As credit unions, I think we waited a little bit too long to respond to some of that. When I think about the fact that none of those 6 credit unions have Zelle, which would have been an appropriate alternative for me to use, we kind of missed the boat. And so now that's already embedded into our society. It's just a normal part of culture for us to use those platforms. Well, what's coming next? Well, what we're starting to see a lot of trending around, in my opinion, is going to be the money movement that is originating out of what might have been considered counterculture at one point in time. If you think about cannabis banking, right? That's always been viewed, or not always, it has historically been viewed as a subculture or a counterculture to typical society. Same thing with gambling and betting. It's been hidden in back alleys. Vegas has like a whole reputation around what happens when things go wrong when you bet and you end up in a hole in a desert. But it's becoming more mainstream. What was that? More like me. Yeah, well, I tried to stay away from that because there was the reset. I felt like that was a little fresh, but and then crypto. Crypto has been really considered a subculture or a counterculture of money movement for years from a privacy perspective and personal freedoms and all those things. And so now they're starting to, well, some of us would argue that cannabis is mainstream. I don't think we can count that as counterculture in my opinion anymore. But crypto and sports betting and other online internet gambling are starting to creep more into the mainstream too. And those are all forms of money movement. So as credit unions, as these are racing and barreling down upon us, the question for this panel really has been, do we continue to wait and see, which is sort of what we did with the Venmos and the Zales and the PayPal of the world, or is it time to go all in? So take it away, sirs. What do you think?
You know, I love the thought that I'm part of a counterculture. I mean, I don't want it to go mainstream, so I'm going to talk a little bit about crypto, but I'm going to start out by asking you a couple of questions, and I think I know what the answer is, but I want to see sort of the response. So raise your hand if you've been to a credit union conference or any conference where there's been a breakout session on crypto. All right, the entire room. All right, here's the second question. How many of you personally were convinced by that presentation and actually invested in crypto? Okay, so maybe a third of the room. That's actually more than I thought. So most of you have not been convinced that crypto should be a part of your life, part of your portfolio, part of your investment portfolio, your retirement portfolio. And that's very common. The stats show that, and I'm going to go over the stats in a bit. But I'm going to make a case that, and nobody else has been largely successful in doing this, and I will probably fail as well, but I'm going to go old school on you guys and try and make a case for why you need to be invested or have some exposure to crypto. I do. I invested in a Bitcoin ETF, and they invest in futures. It's a Bitcoin futures ETF. I see some head shaking, so I think others have done that as well. It's interesting, very interesting. And I'm going to make a case for your exposure, and I'm not an investment advisor, so just please take this with a grain of salt. I'm going to make a case for your exposure to crypto ought to be between 1% and 5% of your total investment portfolio. So I'm going to try and do that. I think also, credit unions should be playing a role in crypto. And we see various credit unions doing different things. For my credit union, we are providing education. We're not quite all in yet. We're helping them avoid the fraud that we often see in crypto. We're educating them about the risk in crypto. And I'll talk a little bit about those risks. And then we talked yesterday about blockchain. And I'm not going to spend much time on it today, but our credit union thinks that blockchain is transformative. It's going to transform our business and every other business in the world. And we are watching it very closely. It's actually moving slower than we thought it was going to move, but we are keeping a watchful eye on that. So back to the stats on crypto. It is primarily a young person's game, and it's primarily males, young males, not young females, but young males. The 18 to 26 age group, 33% of U.S. citizens have invested in crypto. Actually, that's worldwide. And men, it's 50% of that 18 to 26. Now, the numbers go down significantly after that. 30 to 49, 21%. And then my age category, and I think some of you, looking at things like hair color and the lack of hair in some cases, it was pointed out earlier, in the 50 to 64 year age group, it's only 8%. Okay, so it is not mainstream yet. It's talked about mainstream. You cannot open or read a Wall Street Journal without reading about some story about crypto or some company that's involved in crypto. But it's not mainstream. It's not a mainstream investment just yet. So when you hear about the risk of crypto, you hear about market manipulation, business and commercial failure. You hear about regulatory intervention, and I know the NCUA is sort of pushing us in that direction. You hear about rogue custodians, lost passwords, compromised wallets, hacked SIM cards, fat-fingered trades, 51% attacks. Everybody familiar with 51% attacks? That's an attack on the blockchain. It's happened before with Ethereum and a couple other cryptos. And then even plain old everyday scams. And that's what's happening at our credit union. All right, so here's my case for investing in crypto. Back in our college days, perhaps even in high school, we all heard about something called modern portfolio theory. Everybody familiar with that? It's very old school. It was invented in the 50s, 1952. And what modern portfolio theory said, and you ought to revisit it if you haven't looked at it in years. But what Modern Portfolio says is that if you own a single asset, a single investment, your risk is high, very high. If you own two assets equally, and they are both positively correlated, meaning they move in the same direction as markets move, you might as well just own one asset. You haven't reduced your risk. So buying or adding an investment that is positively correlated to what you already own creates more risk, okay? If you own an asset or add a second asset that is negatively correlated, you have done what? You've reduced your risk, right? Very simple theory. Now think about a third asset. So adding a third asset to your portfolio, like crypto. Crypto is the riskiest of all assets, but adding the riskiest of all assets to your portfolio, in the case of crypto, actually reduces your overall risk. Now, how could that be? Data shows that crypto is not correlated in any way. It's negatively correlated to every other type of asset. So by adding the riskiest asset to your portfolio, you're going to reduce your risk. And you're going to increase your return because it's the riskiest of all assets. Anybody convinced? You are. All right. There's some success right there. It's true. Check it out. If you work with an investment advisor, talk to that investment advisor about modern portfolio theory and how adding cryptocurrency or exposure to cryptocurrency will actually reduce your risk. It works out. The numbers work out. So the role that credit unions ought to play in crypto. As I mentioned, we are not quite there yet. We have done lots of education with our members. We have online education. We put it on our newsletter. We do alerts to them about fraud scams related to crypto. And the reason we have not made that next step in partnering with somebody, and I think some credit unions perhaps in this room have partnered with companies like NYDIG, we are concerned about the sustainability of those organizations that stay in the crypto space. We're not sure how to measure and assess whether or not they have any sustainability. And in fact, we had been talking with NYDIG. You probably saw last week they laid off a third of their employees. Their CEO and many executives are gone. They've been replaced. That sort of thing concerns us. So keep a watchful eye on potential partners in that space. We think we need to be there. You've seen all the stats in terms of your membership and the money moving out of your credit union to buy crypto. It's going to continue. Purchasing crypto is very easy to accomplish. So anyways, that's where we are.
Great. Crypto is here to stay. You know, it's also here to stay, sports betting. Sorry. And to be fair, I'm not up here as a board of director. I'm taking that hat off. I'm putting on my investor hat because I have made an investment in a sports betting app. My buddy started it. Him and I talk all the time about it. We get it, right? I see a lot of similarities between sports betting and cannabis, frankly, as far as the way it's kind of going through the U.S., right? Except for there's one main difference. Federally, it is not illegal to sports bet. There's no law in the books on the federal level saying that you can't sports bet. So now 36 states have passed sports betting laws. California is not one of them. California won't be one of them, from what I'm hearing. Both those props are attacking each other, and so we'll have to wait another cycle to be in California. But it's here to stay. You know, in 2019, $1 trillion peer-to-peer payments for sports gambling, for sports betting, right? So you can say your members aren't doing it, but I can tell you your members are doing it. You look at Europe, you look at Asia, like, right? It's just part of their culture, like, and it's coming to the US. You look on ESPN, hey, on that bottom line, oh, the Packers are -4.5 favorites, and it's from -110, and the spread's 35, like, right? It's over-under's 35. You see it everywhere, right? I mean, so can't really be morality police about that when it's just an everyday, culture there. But we also need to be protective of our members, right? I talked to my buddy and I said, what can credit unions do? What can banks do better? What can you do better to support you? Right? He said, open up your system so at least allow that transaction to go through. I mean, right? Instead of declining and having to call and say, what are we doing? He's like, just put that vendor code in and just let us do that transaction to actually help get that money there. Because what's gonna happen is they're gonna move that money into a crypto account, and then that crypto account's gonna go to there, and it's just gonna be kind of even more messy, right? Instead of being that frictionless transactions, right? And then the other side of this, right, is, I asked him, I'm like, so he just got a certification, he can just start taking deposits. And I go, how many options do you have to bank? And he goes, 2. And I go, fees really high? He goes, yep. And I'm not going to disclose those fees because he kind of told me, but I'm like, so there's actually opportunities for a lot of these startups. Like, there are many startups in the sports gambling business that really could use help. Right? I look at cannabis companies similarly, like they need help too, and it is a cash business. So I don't want to necessarily be that closed-minded to sports gambling anymore. It is here to stay. It is going to be legal in all 50 states at some point, 5 years, 10 years down the road. But there's also opportunities here for you to partner with potentially one of your members who's started an app or done something else in that space and not be afraid of taking that money anymore.
Here to stay, definitely.
So.
We've been gambling since the age of money, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, and you're right about California. It's not probably going to go there in this election cycle. So, Bob Craig, I'm the CEO of PayQuick. We have recently announced that we're being acquired by a company called GreenCheck Verified. GreenCheck provides software for cannabis for banks and credit unions. And so a number of you may be on the GreenCheck platform or have heard of PayQuick and GreenCheck. Now we're becoming one company. I'll ask a quick question. How many of you smoke weed? No, don't answer that one. Too invasive, I get it. How many of your institutions are partnering with and working with cannabis operations? Any? None? How many of your institutions are taking cannabis deposits? Now you all need to raise your hands. You all are. Yeah. So let's look in that mirror and we know nothing about that. Well, there are 30,000 institutions that have been licensed by the states, the 38 states that are allowing cannabis in the United States today, and still illegal at the federal level, but we're making slow progress there to allow banking for this Safe Banking Act, and other acts are coming to fruition. 7 times approved and not ratified. But anyway, so there are 500,000 potential members. Some of those are already members that are working in the cannabis industry today in the United States. So that is a market that you can't necessarily ignore. And those family members and households of those are also parts of your member community and potential member community there. And so cannabis is here to stay. More people are using cannabis than cigarettes today. Cannabis taxes are higher than than cigarette taxes, also higher than alcohol taxes in the US for beer and wine. And so it's very, very hard to give up on those tax revenues, as we saw with gambling, as gambling came across the United States, started in Vegas, but then in the more recent years quickly populated to many, many other states. And so this is definitely here to stay, definitely mainstream for your members, definitely mainstream for your communities as well. And especially the investment that a number of us talked about, communities that have been deprived and impacted by very, very biased laws around enforcement. of cannabis regulations. As you guys may have heard, Biden pardoned a number of federal offendees. There are literally tens of thousands of more on the state level. Those were federal level that were Biden, so that Biden pardoned. So much more to do there. Participating in this is an opportunity for the credit union, I think, especially for those that are focused on their community reinvestment as well. And so there are technologies. Now, this has been around for 8 or 9 years, right? Cannabis banking. It was bags of cash that were moving around. No longer, right? It's about 50% bags of cash moving about now. We are using technology, ACH, wires, checks, and all the normal things that small and medium businesses need to operate any quarter business, an HVAC, a hair salon. It's all the same stuff. Pay your employees, buy products, serve customers. That's what cannabis operators are doing. And that's all they're looking for from their banking relationship. And so obviously great opportunities for members there. So I would encourage you to use the technology that's available to serve that. Or if you decide not to serve cannabis operators, embrace the employees that are in those communities as members to your institution and serve them, and use an outsourcing resource like a PayQuick or other companies that serve cannabis operators to be able to serve the business. If you're not comfortable serving that business, don't want to apply the people, technology, and processes to serve those cannabis businesses.
I'll ask a follow-up question that's tied to all three of these things. So with each one of these specific instances that, well, actually, let me rephrase that a little bit. With Michael and Robert's specific instances, Todd's subject comes into play because the alternate money movement pathway for sports gambling, or all gambling really, and cannabis banking is also quickly becoming crypto or blockchain. And there are a lot of fintechs taking opportunities to take advantage of building platforms to allow cannabis banking industries to service their supply chain and ultimately their customers by allowing them to purchase crypto or Bitcoin with their credit or debit card, which is perfectly legal, and we let that happen all day long. And then they're able to take the Bitcoin and actually purchase product from a dispensary. So they're bypassing a lot of the traditional payment methods, as Robert kind of alluded to. Same thing we're starting to see with some of the apps around sports betting, and the ability to use Bitcoin seems to be the one I've seen as the most popular choice to be able to place or collect your proceeds off of sports betting. So for credit unions, where that's now starting to chip into the payment rails that we use all day long and a lot of our businesses are kind of built on, what recommendations might you guys make to assess or vet some of the technologies that are available to credit unions to maybe educate themselves as well as also come up with some risk mitigation strategies for how they might be able to support the payment platforms a little bit differently and not push as many people maybe to crypto or Bitcoin and away from a credit union?
I guess I'll start. I kind of go back to my opening statement of just allowing that transaction to happen. I mean, right? And, you can set limits. Like, it could be $500, it could be $200, like, right? But I don't know if anyone's ever, like, done, I mean, I've done this. I have an sportsbook app, and, like, right, it comes out as, like, flowers.com or My Diamonds, and it's like not the actual company that you're actually doing. I think we talked yesterday about using data, right? And using that transactional data. Like, if you allow it through and you allow that, you can actually see what your members are doing, right? And if all of a sudden it's $500 to this sports gambling app, $500 to this sports gambling app, and you can start tracking it, maybe you do serve up that ad about, financial literacy or making sure, hey, like, do you need help? I think we were talking earlier this week, and, you used to have a member care unit, right? Where you could reach out to members and kind of say, hey, just checking in, just want to make sure that you're doing okay. Are there any financial products that you have? Like, you can market it, right? So instead of forcing people, because, like, I can go exactly buy a Bitcoin and then take that Bitcoin and go invest in a sports gambling app and then gamble and then do my winnings that way. If it's at least going through the credit union rails, then we at least have visibility of what our members are doing, and we can help them if you start seeing them going down a path that is, potentially detrimental to them.
Helping them is one thing. Promoting it is another thing. And we talked this yesterday a little bit about boards of directors, and one of our challenges has been our board. We have very, I would say, conservative policies at our credit union, and so for us, we do a lot of education with our board, and as these things move into the mainstream, and so we really didn't anticipate that. And I'll give you a good example. We do commercial real estate lending in Southern California, and we had a $18 million commercial real estate loan right in front of us just very recently, and it was a mixed-use property, so it had some retail on the first floor, and the potential borrower was leasing space to a dispensary, and we had to pass on that loan because our board of directors can't get over the fact that they're distributing a legal drug, but and so that's been a big challenge for us.
Yeah, on the consumer side, relative to tools that you mentioned that may be converting to crypto so that they can get over the Visa, MasterCard prevention of using Visa and MasterCard branded tools, American Express and Discover included in that. We don't recommend the technology players that are doing conversions to crypto to purchase cannabis. That's something that we think all credit unions and FIs and others that are serving the industry should get educated on. And I'll do a quick commercial for Green Check Verified has thousands of people coming to our boot camp. The Emerging Market Coalition is another group that I'm involved in. Kirsten Trusco is here, the CEO of that group. Get your folks educated about this, your board as well, as to what sort of tools are available, what sort of things you should steer away from, especially consumer-related things that may be converting transactions. You don't want your customers using those tools necessarily. They're liable to get shut down, and your consumers may have, your members may have trouble with them. So we don't think that's a great idea for the future. Again, lobby your issuers to say this should be allowed for our merchant businesses to be able to accept credit cards. That's a safety concern. It's also a convenience concern. It's also a way for them to sell more, right? Because more people will put more on, hopefully, your issued cards.
So just real quick, I'm in the agricultural business. That's what pays me to do my mortgage and whatnot. In Ventura County, I have lots of relationships with farmers, growers, those people that feed us for all over the U.S. So how they get paid is market price. Well, radishes are going to be this today, lettuce is this today. Very volatile. Well, hemp came into our marketplace, if you will, and some other products. And so all of a sudden, there was a group of farmers that said, you know what, we're losing our ground. We don't have water, we don't have all of these things. And they said, let's grow hemp. Let's just try it, And they made more money in one season of growing hemp. Now, it didn't process it, didn't go into oil, just growing it and harvesting it than they did in 5 years of growing fresh produce. And for that, I want a piece of this for our credit, because these are people that help us, right? They're in our community. But because they use different irrigation, different products to grow this, they're targeted. And I'm just fighting like the dickens so these people can stay in business and continue to feed the U.S. Has nothing to do with use. It's just what it's about. What they harvest is none of my business. There's other things out there that's maybe being harvested. But I think we need to open our minds even farther, boards of directors included. I find that it's not necessarily our board, but it's our staff who have to deal with regulators. And some regulators admit they turn their back, and some go, not here. It's hard. It's hard.
Roxy, I think you came up with another panel idea around food
Yeah.
scarcity and credit union funding agriculture. So next underground, yeah.
And I'd recommend that you talk to the NCUA and about how they regulate. Rodney Hood, in particular, is a huge embracer of the cannabis community, especially for the credit unions and you guys serving their communities. So there's a great opportunity to serve your farmer, and this happens all. And I'm right up the road in Calabasas, so up to Santa Barbara. Lots of the folks that were growing cilantro are now growing marijuana and cannabis products, and they're just farmers. And all they did was rotate to a different crop. And by the way, you make the best strawberries in the entire world in Ventura County. I think there's a great opportunity, and the education is a place to start. And the NCUA, actually, we train the NCUA examiners on what to look for in regulation. There are standards that the industry has put together by doing this for 8 or 9 years, and Partner Credit Union and North Bay Credit Union up in the Bay Area, and many others around the country have brought a standard that is starting to become a standard for the industry. And Rodney Hood is a very strong supporter of that. So get your board educated, and some of the folks but you don't want weed in your branches. You don't want a whole lot of extra cash coming in. You want to digitize that kind of stuff so it's safe for everybody.
On the regulatory topic, it's actually, I'm here because Rodney Hood asked. He said, he asked that Emerging Markets Coalition host an event in DC. Bob was there, and he stood up as the keynote and said, this is an opportunity to serve the community. It's about safety, it's about security, it's about deposits. He said, please come out and help educate on what are the real risks and rewards, not the reefer madness kind of stuff. And I just flew in yesterday from a cannabis business conference. They need proper community credit unions. Bob mentioned some good folks out there. There's some not good folks out there that make us all look bad. And it ties so strongly to the edicts and the ethics of credit unions. So I'd emphasize, and with Bob's platform, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to hire an army of compliance folks.
All right, are there any other final questions out in the audience? Okay. In that case, I want to thank the panelists for sharing some of their information today and being able to, again, it was nice to be able to wrap up or tie in some of the other conversations that we've had during the course of this event with fintechs and crypto and blockchain and all of that. And do you feel a little bit cooler knowing you're part of counterculture now?
I do. And I convinced one person to buy crypto, too.
We technically are, and I apologize, I forgot this, we are all part of a counterculture because underground is a little bit of a counterculture, right? Thank you, everyone.
Let's give our panel one more round of applause.